On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee, Mr. Curtis Franklin here today. And this week we talk a little bit about blockchain technology and NFTs and how it's playing a role in some of the latest, greatest technology. Plus, you may have heard of the latest surveillance camera hack that allowed hackers to gain access to 150,000 cameras. We don't know what's going on there. We'll definitely talk about it and maybe some best practices there as well. Plus, we have a great guest, Gautam Goswami. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for TeamViewer. He's going to go take us through the post-pandemic hybrid office. Shouldn't miss it. TWiT on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 435, recorded March 19th, 2021, the Augmented Office Reality. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Things Canary. Detect attackers on your network while avoiding irritating false alarms. Get the alerts that matter. 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Go to canary.tools/TWiT and enter the code TWiT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And by the Enterprise Tech 30. The Enterprise Tech 30 is a definitive list of the 30 most promising B2B startups as determined by over 100 venture capitalists and 20 corporate development teams. Visit enterprisetech30.com to see the 2021's winners. And by Melissa. Like expired milk, 30% of your customers' data goes bad every year. That's money down the drain. Visit Melissa's developer portal for free access to data quality APIs, demos, and code samples. Freshen up your sour data today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/TWiT. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that's dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide to the big giant world of the enterprise. But I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. He's a senior analyst at Omdia. Curtis, how are things in the Sunshine State?
In the Sunshine State, things are just fine. It's a great day down here. And I tell you what, it's an especially fine day to be talking about enterprise tech. You know, there's something about warm weather and sunshine that just makes me want to stay inside and talk tech. So I'm just happy to be here.
Thanks, Curtis. Well, speaking of experts, we also have Mr. Brian Chee. Mr. Brian Chee, how is the right coast tree in the Geek in Paradise?
So far, so good. We're lining up all the contractors and so forth to do the repairs in our new house before we head down the block. Actually, we're literally one block away from Curtis. Fantastic, so fun and games. Fantastic.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing your new digs coming soon. Well, speaking of busy, it's quite a busy week in the enterprise, so we should get started for sure. Now, blockchain continues to be a technology that sparks the innovation in many parts of the industry, but not a lot of it's understood. Curtis will actually take us through the NFTs and how they play a role in blockchain. And you may have heard of the latest surveillance camera hack that allowed hackers to actually gain access to 150,000 cameras. We'll talk about just what happened and some good practices that helps them set them up. Plus, we have a great guest, Gautam Goswami. He's the Chief Marketing Officer from TeamViewer, and he's going to take us through the post-pandemic hybrid office. Looking forward to it. But before we get into all of that, we should also talk about this week's news blips. Cyber attacks are getting more sophisticated. The recent ones pulled off by Russia and China against a broader array of government and industry targets in the United States are actually driving the Biden administration and Congress to rethink how the nation should protect itself from the growing cyber threats. And even more so because of the failure of the intelligence agencies to actually detect them. Now, there's some recent hacks that came up, and they were exploits that had the same gaping vulnerability in the existing systems, and they were launched from both inside the United States on servers run by Amazon GoDaddy, and smaller domestic providers. Now, the attack's putting them out of reach of the early warning systems run by the national security agencies. Now, like the NSA and other American intelligence agencies, the agency is prohibited by law from conducting surveillance inside the United States to protect the privacy of American citizens. Now, the FBI can help, but they were a little late to the party, too. Now, the full extent of the damage to American interests from the hacks is not yet clear, but Microsoft's latest attribute to China is now revealing a second vulnerability. Now, the failures have prompted the White House to begin assessing options for overhauling the nation's cyber defenses, even as the government investigates the hacks. Now, some former officials believe the hacks show Congress needs to give the government additional powers to help. Now, the first problem is actually being able to detect these attacks. America's foremost hacking teams and digital defenders reside in Fort Meade, home to the National Security Agency and its military counterpart, United States Cyber Command. And over more than a decade, with billions of dollars in new technology, they have littered foreign networks with various forms of beacons that give them access to detect attacks as they are coming together or begin. They don't actually work on current soil. Now, this brings hope. That's right, by current and former officials to actually set up a real-time threat sharing arrangement whereby private companies would send threat data to a central repository where the government could then pair it with intelligence from the National Security Agency and the CIA and the other spy shops to actually provide a far earlier warning than it is possible today. Although investigations are underway around these hacks, the data is telling us things need to change. Let's hope we wise up and start being more proactive.
Entire news segment without talking about SolarWinds, but today is not that day. Mimecast says that the hackers who gained access to their systems via a poisoned SolarWinds software update late last year appear to have caused more damage than originally thought. The email security vendor's continuing investigation of the breach has revealed that the attackers accessed and downloaded at least some of its source code repositories, as well as email addresses, contact information, and hashed, salted credentials belonging to some customers. In an update this week, Mimecast described the source code theft as limited in scope and unlikely to have any negative consequences for customers. There is also no evidence that the threat actor used their access to modify Mimecast source code or impact products in any way, the security vendor noted. In its advisory this week, Mimecast reiterated its recommendation that all of its customers reset server connection credentials being used on the Mimecast platform. The company said it had reset the hashed and salted credentials that were accessed, changed all impacted certificates and encryption keys, and implemented closer monitoring of all its certificates and encryption keys. In addition, the company has decommissioned the SolarWinds Orion platform, changed credentials for all employees, and implemented two-factor authentication for employees requiring access to production systems.
There have been dozens of mega breaches in the past decade and over 9,000 reported breaches. Unsurprisingly, many breaches are unreported, as shown by credential dumps available on the dark web, of which a breached organization may be completely unaware. What's going wrong? Why haven't we been able to stop these breaches? Well, in past years, we've seen a plethora of security compliance standards rise. PCI, ISO 2700X, NIST 800-53, HIPAA, and others, all of which require hundreds of checkboxes to be addressed. However, most breached organizations have been compliant at the time the breach occurred. While compliance brings many advantages for helping organizations get more secure, it isn't sufficient to prevent most breaches. Well, my opinion is the big issue is one of forest from the trees. Do not get caught up in symptoms, but you really need to spend the time to find where the root cause was that triggered the domino effect. Try to avoid just going after knee-jerk issues, but take the time to dig a bit deeper. Some root causes can trigger some really unexpected problems. For example, looking at breaches like they happened at Home Depot was because there was an effort to save money, and the choice was made to mix point-of-sale backends with general applications. So my favorite trick is to have an outsider become your co-pilot, so that their unfamiliarity with the system will force them to ask questions that could very well provide that aha moment. So while I'm up on this soapbox, might I suggest that even after you've closed the apparent hole, don't stop digging. There's probably more, and keep in mind that the bad guys seem to have a whole lot of time on their hands and can get ahead of you.
Now, over the past 9 months, researchers have identified advanced hacker exploits. They found no fewer than 11 zero-day vulnerabilities used by compromised websites to infect fully patched devices running Windows, iOS, and Android. Now, using novel exploitation and obfuscation techniques and a wide range of vulnerability types and a complex delivery infrastructure, the group exploited 4 0 days in just February. Now, how were these hacks actually delivered? Well, the exploits were delivered through waterhole attacks, which compromised websites frequent by targets of interest and add code that installs malware on visitors' devices. And in all the attacks, the watering hole sites redirected visitors to a sprawling infrastructure that installed different exploits depending on the devices and browser visitors were using. Whereas the 2 servers used in February exploited only Windows and Android devices, the later attacks also exploited devices running iOS as well. Not safe there. Now, the complex chain of exploits is required to break through layers of defense built into modern OSs and apps. Now, typically, a series of exploits are needed to exploit code on a targeted device, have that code break out of the browser's security sandbox, and elevate privileges to access sensitive parts of the OS. Now, it proves that numerous layers within that platform require security to ensure the validity of claims for access to resources. I think in the coming months and in many more releases that we'll see from these OSs, we'll see more defenses built into these platforms, possibly causing some more pain for app developers and users alike.
Remote desktop protocol attacks have been hot and are getting even hotter. RDP was a hot target for cybercrime as businesses shifted to remote work due to COVID-19, and a year after the initial lockdown, the trend shows no signs of slowing. In the spring of 2020, when many organizations shut their office doors, attacks targeting RDP began to skyrocket. Kaspersky reported a spike from 93.1 million global RDP attacks in February to 277.4 million in March, a 197% increase. While there was some variation in the number of attack attempts toward the end of 2020, the number of companies reporting RDP attacks per day remained steady. Between the first and fourth quarters of 2020, RDP attacks grew 768%. While these attacks certainly weren't the only threat to watch in 2020, they saw a larger spike than most, according to researchers at ESET. Crypto miners went up for the first time since 2018, a trend that they attribute to growing Bitcoin prices, and downloaders saw an increase for most of the year. But hastily implemented and configured RDPs in many organizations have played a role in driving this type of attack. Now that criminals have identified RDP as an effective attack vector, it's unlikely we'll see these attacks ease up, especially as businesses decide to allow for remote work more often or full-time. Both employees, employers, and criminals are growing accustomed to the remote way of working.
So I wanted to share a new IoT toy that I just ran across. So the biggest problem with trying to apply IoT technology to the enterprise is how to get data out of multiple devices into an enterprise data store. My personal answer has been MQTT, which gives me some really cool tools to read from those Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and connect them to a data store to make it a bit more useful. So what the NOT does, K-N-O-T, is not force you to drag a cable into that generator room, that air conditioning equipment room, or many other places that you'd like to monitor but have been hesitating because of the huge cost of getting conduit put into what is essentially a vault. What the NOT does is to allow you to push data out into the world using something like LTE Cat-M or LTE narrowband cellular systems that for low throughput applications can be dramatically cheaper than traditional data connectivity options, and has taken the place of the old 2G and 3G modems whose RF bands have been sucked up to make more 5G usable. The unfortunate truth is that in most locations, either regulations or building rules force you into some very expensive conduit runs to get into HVAC, power vaults, and other types of building equipment rooms. Whereas something that only needs to send maybe a couple mega data per month could very well only cost you as little as $7 a month. Mileage may vary. So the balancing act here is that you can buy a whole lot of months of LTE Cat M1 or LTE narrowband for the same price you would pay for a contractor to drill through that concrete wall and install the EMT conduit. So I wanted to share this cool little gateway product that makes this a lot easier to harvest a collection of IoT data points without needing a modem for each device, even if those are traditional Modbus devices like power and HVAC monitoring systems.
Now, we've talked many times before on the show about how vulnerable our electric grid is to attacks. As if diehard wasn't enough evidence, in a recent report, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, noted that the Department of Energy's cybersecurity strategy has predominantly focused on generation and transmission systems. Now, the watchdog recommended further attention to risks facing distribution systems, those parts of the grid that actually carry power directly to customers. Scary. And those aspects of the grid, the report states, quote, are becoming more vulnerable to cyber attacks, in part due to the introduction and reliance on monitoring and control technologies. Now, the systems, though actually part of the report analyzed, generally are not covered by federal cybersecurity standards, but have in some cases taken independent action on them. In its recommendations, the GAO report calls for the Secretary of Energy to collaborate with state officials, industry figures, and Department of Homeland Security to better address distribution system risks, including any potential fallout to the department's national cybersecurity strategy for such attacks. Let's hope they listen this time. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get to the bites, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Thanks Canary. Now, the last thing anybody wants or needs right now is a data breach, right? Well, rather than the villain lying in wait, you have a hero. That's Thanks Canary waiting for them, and companies usually find out too late that they've been compromised even after they've already spent millions of dollars on IT security. It just wasn't enough. Now, Canary has completely changed the game here. It's designed to be installed and configured in minutes, and pardon the pun, left to its own devices. You don't have to think about it. Now, attackers prowling a target network look for juicy content. That's right. They'll browse Active Directory for file servers and explore file shares looking for documents. They'll try default passwords against network devices and web servers, and they'll scan for open services across the network. Now, canaries can be deployed throughout the entire network, and you can make them look identical to a router or even a switch, a NAS server, a Linux box, or a Windows server, so attackers won't know they've been caught. Now, Thanks Canaries are designed to look like the things that hackers want to get to. Now, you can put fake files on them or even enroll them in Active Directory, and then when attackers investigate further, they give themselves away and you're instantly notified. Now, you can also use Canary tokens. Now, these are tiny tripwires that you can drop into hundreds of places. They follow the Thanks Canary philosophy of trivial to deploy with ridiculously high quality of signal. Now, if an alert happens, Canary will notify you any way you want. Plus, you won't have to be inundated with the false alarms. You can get alerts in many different ways. You can get an email or a text message on your console, Slap, webhooks, syslog, or their API. That's right. You can integrate with their API. Choose the option that works best for your business. Now, it's important that companies know two things when it comes to data breaches. Number one, hackers will usually take the path of least resistance, and that's typically your staff. And number two, it takes on average 191 days for a company to realize that there's been a data breach. That's too long, and Thanks Canary solves the problem for you. Now, the people behind Canary have been in the security game for almost 2 decades and have trained companies, militaries, and governments how to break into networks. That's the knowledge they've used to actually build Canary. Now, Thanks Canaries are deployed all over the world on all 7 continents and are one of the best tools against data breaches. Visit canary.tools/twit, and for just $7,500 per year, you'll get 5 canaries, your own hosted console, upgrades, support, and maintenance. And if you use the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box, you'll get 10% off the price for life. We know you'll love Thanks Canary, but if you're not happy, you can always return your canaries with their 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. That's canary.tools/twit, and enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And we thank Thanks Canary for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. Blockchain, that's right. It continues to be a technology in different corners of the industry, and they try to integrate it into their different workflows and businesses. And there are parts of it that people still don't understand, especially NFTs. Curtis, take it away.
Well, Lou, speaking of things that people don't understand, recently the news was filled with a story of someone who paid $69 million for a digital image by Beeple. Now, the digital image was sold through a technology called NFT, or Non-Fungible Token. What, you may ask, is a non-fungible token? Well, it's kind of like a cyber currency, only different. For example, if you and I each have a Monero coin or a Bitcoin and we trade them, each of us still has a Bitcoin or a Monero coin. Essentially, one is not recognizable from another. Each NFT, though, is distinct and unique. Think of it more like a baseball card, where if you have a Mickey Mantle and I have a Barry Bonds, we can trade, but then I have a Mickey Mantle and you have a Barry Bonds. Each one is unique. The idea that these unique tokens can be associated with or attached to items in the real world is what has a lot of people very interested in them, because these become ways to trade and protect things that otherwise might not be tradable via the internet. Now, right now, almost all the talk about NFTs centers on the art world. This is a way that artists see to monetize things like videos and digital artworks. The interesting point, by the way, is that you would have an NFT that's associated with your original of that digital artwork, while just about anyone could go ahead and cut and paste a copy of that digital artwork. It's similar in some ways to the way that the copyright works in the art world. There's the owner of the physical image, the painting or print. Then there's the owner of the copyright, which may or might not be the same as the owner of the physical work. And then there's everybody else who wants to rip it off. Now, there are those who are not in the art world who have started thinking about NFTs as ways that different items of corporate interest might be protected, traded, and tracked through these NFTs that are non-fungible and non-changeable. So, Lou, I want to come to you first. Had you heard about NFTs prior to the last couple of weeks? And what do you think about this whole idea of having something that is digital yet unique?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of them before. I've never actually, understood how they were applied in practice. But I think the key here is, having something that's digital and unique is sometimes almost an oxymoron, because a lot of times something that's digital could be copied and or eventually reproduced. And so that's why a lot of these hardware keys or the encryption keys that are in hardware are becoming even more useful and spread around the internet, obviously like YubiKey or something like that, for presence, to identify presence and so on. So I'm curious on how they will ensure these things stay unique, especially if somebody's machine is compromised or something is compromised. I'm curious to understand a little bit more about that technology.
Well, one of the interesting things, it seems to me, is that these are unique, but as you say, by protecting the wallet, that's how you protect the asset, because just like a stock certificate or something like that, if it is stolen, then whoever stole it has that unique token. One of the interesting things with an NFT is that it should be much harder to launder these through some of the techniques that have been used to launder cryptocurrencies. Brian, you have spent a career dealing with things like crypto keys and encryption keys. What do you think about this idea of having a unique token that can't be changed and can always be identified as it moves from owner to owner?
Actually, I think we're thinking of it a little wrong, or at least in my mind. It's kind of like a savings bond, a U.S. savings bond. Ideally, even if it's lost or stolen, we want to be able to get it back. Same thing for stock certificates. But if the wallet still exists, we can still prove without a doubt that we own it. And in theory, it could be reissued. This is actually a fairly decent model for, currency, isn't it? I'm thinking, beyond just art, electronic stock certificates are pretty cool. I want to be able to have them. I don't want to have the physical stock certificate, and things like that. So, yeah, this is interesting. It's a little tough to wrap your arms around, but being able to prove ownership, I think, is actually going to be the big issue, because we want to be able to go and make copies, but still prove that we own it. So I don't know. I think there's a few slots in my mind that'll fit into, but I'm still grasping at straws here.
Well, I think it is going to be interesting to see how this can be applied. And like many things in the digital age, I think that this sort of fairly ridiculous valuation that the original NFTs were given in the things that hit the news first ultimately will be swept away by much more practical valuations and much more practical applications. This strikes me as one of those things that does, in fact, have a number of enterprise and business-oriented applications. We just need to get away from people paying $69 million for each and every one. Well, with that, I think we're going to close up this unique non-fungible bite and toss it over to Lou to tell us about a break-in that dealt with privacy.
Indeed. Now, hackers say they broke into the network of Silicon Valley startup Verkada and gained access to live video feeds from more than 150,000 surveillance cameras. Now, I'm really curious of what happened here. Chee, what happened?
Well, the reality is Verkada sells to enterprises and organizations specifically on the concept that you don't want to have to go and invest a lot of money into servers to run your video management system. Everything goes to the cloud. Well, here's the problem. If you lose the keys to the kingdom, now all of a sudden, every single Verkada camera out in the wild can now be looked at with impunity. So that's pretty scary. And we kind of wonder why that's the case. Verkada actually does not even have an option for on-premise storage. Everything must go to the cloud. So with this break-in, that means all Verkada cameras, every single one of them, is now open to the world.
So the interesting thing here is how is this even allowed from their service related? Curtis, I want to go to you because I think a lot of times, we talk about privacy data and especially surveillance data. We've talked about how Google was taken under fire because of some of their stuff they're doing with their the video surveillance systems, and how Arlo, Netgear's Arlo was also under fire recently around this as well. And now you're talking about an organization that actually manages businesses and small business, large businesses, and surveillance data that goes along with that. It sounds like these types of organizations need to be under some kind of surveillance themselves and some regulation themselves. Is there something that can help here?
Well, I think the big thing that could help is adhering to best practices when it comes to credentials. It looks like Verkada violated those best practices in two respects. Number one, they hard-coded credentials into their cameras, and number two, they basically used the same credentials for all their cameras. Now, that makes management super simple as long as you're in a super secure environment, which I think we all can agree the internet at large is not. So this was one where a single point of failure existed that cascaded throughout their infrastructure. And it brings us back to some of the same lessons that are busy being taught over at SolarWinds. Number one, you have to be careful with who your third-party suppliers are. I think that 2021 may end up being the year of third-party risk assessment, because here we have another case of a managed service provider that was attacked, was breached, and then responsible for loss of privacy and security at lots and lots and lots of their customers.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up SolarWinds, because I think this is an interesting thing. There's this whole concept of, of storing credentials, having these personal access tokens, or, even just storing credentials in general, whether it's in code or in some public space, and whether it's for automation purposes or for other things. You think that this day and age, some organizations would be away from that? Obviously, with SolarWinds, there's some talk about intern, storing something in a GitHub repo or something like that around their credentials, or some type of credentials that had access to an organization's box. I mean, this is something that a lot of organizations should be doing. They should be scanning for credentials, code scanning. They should be document scanning, repository scanning for these types of things, and making sure there's lots of tools out there that help you with this, that will at least relieve your organization of any public displacement of identification or accessible admin credentials. I think in this case, this was their weakest link, one of their weakest links at least. Chee, what do you think that other organizations should be doing here? I mean, obviously credentials is one big thing, but there should be some kind of JIT admin access, or we've talked a lot about zero trust, right? Where you're basically securing things for only individuals. I mean, will these things combined at least help these types of organizations, especially organizations that are 100% in cloud?
One could only hope. Keep in mind that Verkada is actually a closed system. There's no way to get in. You can only pull data from the system down via their interface. This is one of the reasons why we can't use them for a lot of government applications. In fact, we stick to cameras that comply with what's called ONVIF. It's a camera standard, and it's leveraged on third-party video management systems like Milestone, Access, Genetec, even lower-end systems that are almost free, like Blue Iris. The issue here is a lot of people have chosen a closed system, completely cloud-based, and at the whims of the policies of that corporation, Verkada, because they didn't want to have to manage it. And I see their point. I've worked with a lot of public safety groups, and managing a VMS or a video management system is, in many cases, what they would call a white elephant. They don't want to do it. They don't want to have full-time IT staff to manage what is, in essence, a fairly complex IT infrastructure. So Verkada went in and found that sweet spot that a lot of public safety people don't want to deal with. And unfortunately, maybe they needed to pay a few more attentions to, say, some security standards.
Indeed they do. Well, hopefully more organizations start to pay closer attention to security standards. Well, folks, that does it for our bites. Next up, we have our favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest that drops some knowledge on the TWiT riot. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is the Enterprise Tech 30. The Enterprise Tech 30 is a piece of seminal research developed by Wing Venture Capital in partnership with NASDAQ. Now, the private enterprise tech is an opaque sector. You have no idea which company is doing well or poorly due to caginess around growth and revenue, especially as sales cycles can be long and arduous. There are many ranked lists that feature startups or tech disruptors, but these lists are often dominated by consumer brands or more mature B2B startups everyone already knows. These lists create credibility and trust that a company featured will deliver a real, tangible outcome. However, this is often not the case, as the way many of these lists are produced is by lobbying or pay-to-play methods and are subject to bias or based on how much hype a company can generate. The Enterprise Tech 30 brings to light the enterprise startups who have the most potential to tectonically shift how enterprises operate for the better. Awardees to the ET30 are on a fast track of growth and to change how business is done and are expected to be future IPOs and multi-billion-dollar exits. It's not possible to lobby your way onto the ET30. In fact, you can only be selected and become a part of an elite community. Enterprise Tech 30 focuses on companies with potential at all stages of maturity rather than only showcasing companies with mature businesses and undeniable traction. Now, the ET30 can be considered a buying guide for enterprise executives seeking to bring more validated and credible digital innovation into their organizations. Enterprise tech founders should see inclusion as the highest endorsement of their current and future success. Founders that aspire to build publicly traded companies should see inclusion as a watershed moment in their founder's journey. Tech executives and high-performance operators will use the list to help guide their decisions on what companies to join. The 2021 edition of the Enterprise Tech 30, brought to you by Wing Venture Capital and NASDAQ, just launched. Head over to enterprisetech30.com to see who made this year's list. That's enterprisetech30.com. And we thank ET30, Wing, and NASDAQ for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiT riot. And today we have Gautam Goswami. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at TeamViewer. Welcome to the show, Gautam.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Now, our audience loves to hear people's origin stories. Can you maybe take us through a short journey through tech and what brought you to TeamViewer?
Sure. I actually did my education all in India, came to the United States in the year 2000, and my first job actually was at a company called TWiT as the webmaster of the company. I grew in that company over the next 16 years to be the head of marketing, the global VP of marketing. From there, OpenText actually acquired us, and I became the head of global marketing for OpenText. And I moved on from there to the world of private equity and venture capital. Worked on a bunch of deals with Permira, which is the private equity company, as well as some venture-funded companies as a consultant, as an advisor. And then I decided to join TeamViewer, which was one of my advisory roles through Permira as the CMO in 2019, because I saw the incredible growth that was in front of TeamViewer, and I was already helping push that growth as an advisor for almost 2 years at that point. So I decided to join as CMO in 2019. And then I took on the product role also. So I run marketing and products for TeamViewer. So officially, I basically am the marketing and product officer.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, we have a lot of organizations and guests on that talk a lot about the new norm and how organizations are switching to this hybrid model, both with remote and on-site people, and how they need to be able to scale their organization and all of their services and systems that go along with it. Can you maybe take us through maybe some of the trends you're seeing here and what organizations are doing to be able to support the hybrid workplace?
The hybrid workplace is real. Like anyone who's thinking that a workplace will become completely remote is obviously that's not going to happen. Everyone I know, and including my colleagues and my friends, they all can't wait to go back to work. So the way we are seeing that progress is happening in hybrid workplace is more and more people are actually setting up offices in remote areas. So as what happened over the last year, there's a lot of people moved away from the Silicon Valley and from bigger data centers, bigger cities. So because they have already moved away, making them move back is not really a possibility. So there's a combination of remote working through basically products like Zoom and Skype, and then also there's going to be micro offices or mini offices in all these smaller centers where people have moved to, and people can come and actually work as a group in those smaller offices while they are actually doing remote connection with the head offices or the main center. So it's a combination of people coming together again, but maybe in smaller groups, and then remoting from different locations to form the bigger group that used to happen earlier.
Right. Now we're seeing a little bit of interesting data here, and it almost makes me a little afraid. So I'm actually curious what's going on here about the inclusion of AR and maybe AI to help improve the experience, both from a remote hybrid perspective, from the collaboration perspective, and from the remoting perspective. What's going on there?
See, augmented reality is going to the next level. I just wrote an article last week, basically about how smart glasses are becoming reality now and becomes actually a value proposition. Smart glasses came out quite early, as we know, with Google Glass. But now we can actually get to the point where smart glasses can tell a person who is not with you at the moment, basically what you're looking at, and they can project using augmented reality solutions and advice to a person who is on the field. So that's one great application where people can actually support very, very difficult applications without actually traveling to the location. But even cooler is that I'm very sure that very soon what we see on video conferencing will transfer to augmented reality-based communication that we have seen on basically sci-fi movies, where the augmented reality actually places people in a virtual space, and as you're talking to four people, you will see through your smart glass that on the left is person A, in the middle is person B, and the right is person C. And that all happens through your smart glasses and a video communication channel like Zoom or TeamViewer.
Wow. Yeah, I think this definitely sounds like a game changer to me. Only because you feel a little closer, and it's that kind of high touch type feeling that you get when you're in person. And you, obviously, being everyone remote or in the office or remote, you kind of feel the same together. One thing that brings to mind here, though, obviously, new technology sometimes brings a lot of challenges. What do you think one of the biggest impacts, especially from a remote office perspective, would be? Is it maybe bandwidth? Is it jitter? Is it latency? What do you think it might be?
See, with 5G, I don't think the bandwidth will be a problem. Especially as 5G gets rolled out everywhere, you will see that the bandwidth problem goes away. What the biggest issue will be physical fitness and mental fitness. It's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. And actually, I've instructed my HR team to actually work on that significantly to make sure that people actually take breaks. People don't have infinite work hours, and they actually go and have physical work activity that they would do, like going out to lunch with friends, having a social connection with the employees that they're actually working with, and not completely become virtual. Because as virtual reality becomes more and more real, the need to go somewhere reduces. That's the biggest risk here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting part here is, we're hearing a lot of new technologies that go along with, we talked a little bit about AI and AR, and the fact that, obviously there's the more generic issues that people are having, obviously mental issues and local and being able to have social issues and so on. But one thing I'm wondering about, I mean, obviously there's a lot of this technology that's being required to help with this. We're obviously going to have a lot of restrictions. People, like you said, 5G is not going to hit everybody. Is there some additional technology that can help, that at least if somebody's on a bad connection or something that's high latency, that that might help with that to help achieve a better kind of feed or stream?
So this is all in data, multi-rate data streaming. I can go all geeky on you, but basically, look, we are building some of these technologies. We are really focusing on, like, the first generation of AR technologies that we launched worked on Apple iPhones really well, but now we are making sure that a 3G connection with a regular any basically Google phone or basically any phone that is running Android will also be able to have an augmented reality experience through the phone itself. Forget about smart glasses. And how are we doing that? By basically variable bandwidth compression. So we are making sure that even if the quality decreases, the audio and video stream keeps on going, and the augmented reality features let's say that an Apple phone with a LiDAR scanner can actually place a 3D object in an augmented reality space much better than a phone that doesn't have that. But what we are doing is we're automatically downgrading the experience so that people can actually at least have the experience, if not at that high level. So a lot of people with different kinds of equipment, smart glass, an Apple phone, or a very basic phone running Android, will also be able to have a common communication platform and work together and use the enhancement that comes with AR. So there is multiple technologies, mostly data compression and variable rate compression, that's going to take care of this.
Right. Now, we talked a lot about this here on TWiT around some of the new, the latest administrations, kind of pushing the 100 megabit per second symmetrical as being the new broadband definition. How will, if a lot of the new technologies are trying to take advantage of some of the lower bandwidth, higher latency connections, and people who have less of a high bandwidth connection. Well, obviously a better connection will help. But do you think that as the industry develops more technology to handle at a lower speed connection, that this could maybe push out the need for some of these some infrastructure movement there?
I don't see it that way. Actually, the infrastructure movement, I think infrastructure needs to keep on going up. Look, there will be people that will need the lower bandwidth connection. And of course, as we make this technology available to more and more people who don't have access to the higher bandwidth or higher level hardware, we are developing situations in that. But if we don't have infrastructure development at the top end, we won't be able to actually push the boundaries of technology. So we are really looking forward to that 100 megabit per second, as well as 5G to be very common, because that will really change the perspective of how augmented reality changes humanity. Things that we have seen in movies like Iron Man is reality. Like, I don't know if you have looked at the latest version of Microsoft's HoloLens, but you can actually work with objects in a 3D space using augmented reality TeamViewer technology and on Microsoft HoloLens as if you're constructing things in front of your table. So, and I can do that with a simple iPhone also on my car's dashboard, because we are bringing the technology down everywhere. So while it is necessary that we also bring it to the lower level computers and lower level computing devices and low bandwidth situations, I don't think the need for the top level will go away. Actually, it will keep on growing because it moves to industrial space. Look at the screen that you're sharing right now, right? We are helping companies develop and build machines much faster. We are helping logistic warehouses go and pick the right things from the shelves faster. So there's no need for training. You don't need somebody to be trained on a machine for months now to go and operate a really complex machine. You just put on a glass, and the glass tells you exactly what to do and how to operate the machine.
Right. Well, when we come back, I do want to bring my co-hosts in because they have a lot of questions for you. But before we do that, we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Melissa. Now, ever forgotten to check the date on a carton of milk? I know I have, but like milk, the customer data goes bad as well. And in fact, up to 30% of customer data goes bad each and every year. That's a lot of data. Now, Melissa makes sure your data is accurate and current so you reach the right customers at the right time. Now, the tools have helped businesses maintain fresh data for over 35 years. That's why over 10,000 businesses trust the address experts. Now, with Melissa, you can validate existing customer data and find new customers as well. Stop wasting time and money dealing with inaccurate customer data. Get accurate data that helps you get to know your customers better. You can verify addresses, emails, phone numbers, and names in real time with Melissa. Melissa's global address verification service verifies addresses for more than 240 countries and territories at the point of entry. You're tired of having duplicate customer information in your database? Well, that's where Melissa can help, because with Melissa's data matching, you can actually eliminate clutter and duplicates, increase accuracy of the database, and reduce postage and mailing costs. Now, get the information that completes your customer profiles better and more thoroughly. You can, in fact, add consumer demographic information to your records, such as property data, marital status, and social media handles. Melissa's flexible deployment options offer different platforms to suit any preferences, including business size or budget. With flexible on-premise, web service, secure FTP processing, and software as a service delivery options, you can choose the best way to meet your unique business needs. Now, Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits to reinforce their commitment to data security, privacy, and compliance requirements. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant. And in fact, Melissa is supporting communities and qualifying essential workers during COVID-19. See if your organization qualifies for 6 months of free service by applying online. Don't put up with sour customer data. Try Melissa's APIs in the developer portal. It's easy to log on, sign up, and start playing in the API sandbox 24/7. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank Melissa for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Gautam Goswami. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at TeamViewer. And we're talking a little bit about the post-pandemic hybrid office and just about some new technologies and some new advances that are going to help that model. But I do want to bring my co-host back in. I want to start with you, Chee.
Well, my question is, we first heard about TeamViewer in terms of remote support, being able to very easily, without having to punch a whole bunch of holes in the firewall, be able to go and provide support to mom, to dad, to grandma. That's where we first heard about TeamViewer. What I'd like to know is, has the world of remote support changed? You know, that's obviously the bread and butter for your corporation. But why TeamViewer instead of, say, RDP or VNC or something like that? You obviously have done something right because you're one of the go-to technologies for this.
See, we took it to a totally different level. Yes, TeamViewer 15 years ago was formed by the exact same premise that you just said, which is it was a help your mom, help your dad, help your brothers with their computer problems product. But now TeamViewer actually supports the International Space Station. We remote into the space station and check the heart monitors of the astronauts up there to make sure that they're in good health. We help doctors check in real time if the patient that they're doing an e-consultation with is actually using the right what we call, let's say, blood pressure monitor, and what is the record that's coming out of it. So our remote support software is connected with our IoT platform, which in real time shows the data that is actually what the data process is happening inside the machine as you make changes to it through the remote control software. And on top of that, now we have augmented reality-based remote support, so what we call support of things. So TeamViewer went from supporting computers to supporting anything connected, so it can be the space station or a tractor in southern Australia, to supporting anything that's not connected. So let's assume that somewhere 500 miles from Los Angeles, a small town near the desert, electricity goes out in the middle of the night, and there's a small problem in the grid, but there's no electrician or grid engineer available, but there's one security guard at the gate. That's it, right? Today, using our technology, that security guard can place a call to the AT&T or the PG&E guy, and they can actually show him through augmented reality what to do, what spark plug to change, how to fix the grid, because it's a very small problem. So the things like this happen every day. We have clients that actually take our technology and use it to deploy really hard-moving technologies. For example, let's say we have to deploy 25 new engineers into a new factory, and these engineers on a regular basis would take, let's say, about 3 to 6 months of training before they can work in this factory. But with TeamViewer technology now and smart glasses and our augmented reality support platform, we can allow these engineers to start working within a 15 days timeline. Once they understand the basics of the machines, when they have the smart glasses on, there is auto-running workflows, which will tell them exactly what to do with the machine, what is the step-by-step process to produce something, as well as if they get stuck, someone from a remote location can actually be in their ear and in front of their eyes and physically and visually show them how to fix the problem. Exactly, you're showing some of the stuff on the screen. So it's gone far beyond what we call as computer support RDP, because this is video communication, this is multi level multi-user video communication along with audio layers, along with augmented reality layers. And all of this merges together into our proprietary network. So we have our own network of servers around the world. When we compress data in our own bandwidth with our own proprietary technology that allows us to really do it on a 3G phone, as I mentioned earlier, along with a really fast-moving computer with a wired internet connection. So basically, that's what sets us apart. We work in every situation. It's raining hard and you're stuck in the middle of the mountains and there's barely any internet connection, TeamViewer will work.
You know, one of the questions that I have, I think you've done a good job of telling us how the bandwidth works, but I'm a little more interested in the human component of all this, because while you're talking about some very specialized uses, some very technologically savvy users in some of these support roles, the fact is that to become an enormous enterprise presence, you've got to engage the regular office worker, the people who are in marketing, who are in sales, who are in all the back office support roles. And for them, a lot of these things that we're talking about, whether we're talking about the augmented reality glasses or the technology to provide a higher level of experience, that's pretty intimidating. So what are you doing there at TeamViewer to make this more accessible to a broader range of employee in the enterprise?
Not only the enterprise, actually TeamViewer is going consumer. So as you know, the first version of TeamViewer was, and even now the version that you guys talk about, is for consumers too, right? It's for you helping your mother and your brother. That's nothing to do with enterprise. Of course, we took that to the enterprise level that I mentioned. But with the augmented reality technology also, we're bringing it right back to the consumer. So we already have an app called TeamViewer Pilot that everyone can use, but we are very soon releasing another app, which will actually come live in May, it'll be a 13 plus app in the App Store. So this will allow people to solve everyday problems like, oh, my grandpa doesn't know how to set up the Xbox that I sent, so I can play with him while I'm away. And so this technology is available not only on smart glasses, as I said, it's available on your regular phone, and we are bringing it down. We have exclusive partnerships with Apple. We have exclusive partnership with Google, and they are super excited about our technology. The reason they're super excited is exactly what you just mentioned. It does not just work on the smart glasses. It works on a regular iPhone. It works on Android phone. So it gives you broadness like TeamViewer has given in the past. The same technology that is used in the factory floor to solve complex problems can be used at home to show your mom how to change the ink cartridge in the printer because she's alone at home and she needs to print something and the ink ran out. We are solving that problem, and it's basically available today. A better version and a more consumer version is launching in May.
Well, you're talking about the consumer version, and I want to ask another quick question regarding consumers, because earlier today, news broke that TeamViewer's logo is going to be on the playing kit of Manchester United for the next 5 years. That's a huge commitment financially for TeamViewer, but from your perspective in marketing, I'm curious, what are you hoping to gain? Who are you hoping to reach through having your logo on the Manu kit out there in front of the people in the stands, and of course the many, many more people watching television?
So as you know, TeamViewer has 2 billion plus devices installed as of today. So that's numbers that are basically unknown for in the enterprise world. And our strength is actually in that numbers, right? So we have always been able to say, okay, your employees are already using TeamViewer in your everyday life. Now take our extra secure enterprise version and use it in your enterprise. And that's how we have grown. So with the manual thing, what we are trying to do is we're trying to sow the seed for the next generation of TeamViewer apps that are coming out. So we will be releasing, I'm sure you guys are aware, we have done some really strong acquisitions recently in the augmented reality space. So we bought Ubimax, which was the largest augmented reality player in Europe, and now we just bought Upskill. So now Upskill is part of TeamViewer, which is basically largest US brand for augmented reality. So we are taking these technologies, we are building the industrial grade AR, but in the same way as TeamViewer was always for everyone, we are also building the consumer part of TeamViewer AR, which will be available on your phone and which will be deployed across the globe for everyone to use in their everyday life. So this is a precursor. We are setting the stage for the next generation of TeamViewer virality. So TeamViewer's secret has always been the virality. The fact that our software is free for personal use. The same thing with our augmented reality consumer version of the software, completely free for personal use, available on every phone. That's why everyone is a customer. So there's no use case that we cannot solve. You have a problem, your son is driving his car in the middle of the desert, he got a flat tire, and this is the new generation that never change a tire. So he calls dad, and you can show through your phone how they can fix the tire. So the problems can be anything. Our technology will solve it. So absolutely, with Manu, every person in the stand is is a TeamViewer customer or a TeamViewer free user. So it totally makes sense for us.
Man, I really love the idea that it's free for personal use. That's fantastic. I'll really check that out for sure. Well, folks, all good things come to an end. And Gautam, we're running a little low on time. I do want to give you a chance maybe to tell the folks at home where they can learn more about TeamViewer, some of that new technology you were talking about, and how can they get started.
Well, TeamViewer.com is everything. Just go to the website, you'll find it. If you already don't have TeamViewer on your computer, which is doubtful, as I said, 2 billion, you can go install it completely free for personal use, and then look for TeamViewer Pilot. That's the first version of the augmented reality software that you can use on your phone for completely free. That's TeamViewer Pilot. You'll find it all on TeamViewer.com.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. So tune your podcatcher to TWiT. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. It's a team effort, and we have the best team in the industry. My co-hosts for sure, starting with Mr. Brian Chee. Brian, what's going on for you in the coming week, or where can people find you?
It's dotting the I's, crossing the T's, buying a house, hopefully getting ready to go and move in soon. We're talking to the moving company and saying, could we have these boxes first? Ought to be interesting.
Good luck with everything. Good luck with everything. People can still find you on the normal Twitter site, normal Twitter handle.
Oh, yes, of course. And if anyone got my Twitter handle off the bottom third, my apologies. I apparently fumble-fingered something. It is ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. And, we get some great show ideas from our viewers. Why don't you drop me an email if you'd like? I'm Cheebert at twit.tv. That's spelled CHEEBERT. Or better yet, why don't you drop a line to TWiT at twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your comments. Take care.
Hey, thank you, Cheebert. We also have to thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming week? Where can people find you and all your work?
Well, as always, people can find me at omdia.com. I'm also hanging out on Twitter at KG4GWA. I'm over it on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just practically everywhere. And I've just finished up a piece on ransomware. That's available. I posted a link to that on all my social media today. Would love for folks to check it out. Working on a larger piece for dashboards, enterprise security dashboards that should be available to people later on this month. Enjoying doing a lot of things with the analysis group, talking to lots of people, and looking forward to hearing from the TWiT Riot about what you want to know about. What questions would you have me ask people I take your suggestions very seriously and appreciate each and every one.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you guys for being here. Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well. That's right. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise goodness. And we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to the show. So go right now to our show page, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, of course, the links of the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos there, you'll get those helpful download and subscribe links. That's right. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version of your choice, and listen on any one of your devices or on any one of your podcast applications, on any one of your podcatcher applications. That's right, because we're on pretty much all of them. Now, subscribe because it's really the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news, and it's also the best way to support the show as well. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your friends, coworkers, family members by giving the gift of TWiT, because we talk about a ton of fun tech topics on this show, and I can guarantee you that they will find it interesting as well. Now, if you've already subscribed and you're available one of these days on Fridays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, we do the show live.twit.tv. Come see how the pizza's made, the behind the scenes, all the fun stuff we do here on TWiT. Come check that out at live.twit.tv. And of course, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. It's irc.twit.tv. We love the chat room. We got some great discussion points and some questions during the show there. So definitely be part of that community if you can. Now, if you can't watch the show live and you can't be part of the chat room, that's okay. You can still be part of the amazing TWiT community. You can still be part of the discussion 24/7, in fact, over at our great website, twit.community. Check that out because it's a 24/7 discussion, and it shows all the content for the shows is out there, the hosts, the guests. There's lots of discussions on technology. You should definitely check out twit.community 24/7. Remember, you can always follow me at twitter.com/LouMM. There I post all my enterprise tidbits. I have some great conversations with people like you. And of course, I also post a little bit about what I do at Microsoft during my normal work week. You can also check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the latest and greatest ways to customize your Office experience and make it more productive for you and your organization. Now, I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you to all their support over the years. I also want to thank all the engineers and staff at TWiT. And of course, I want to thank Mr. Brian Chee one more time. He's not only our co-host here, but he's also our tireless producer. He does all the show bookings and all the behind the scenes plannings for the show. We really couldn't do this show without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. Now, of course, before we sign out, we have to thank our editor, Victor. He does and makes us look great after the show. And of course, our TD for today makes us look great during the show and after the show, Mr. Ant Pruitt. But, he's also doing some great stuff here on TWiT as well. Ant, what's coming up in the coming week for you on TWiT?
Well, sir, I just put out another fun episode of Hands-On Photography where I took you out into the field and walk you through my tips on getting the best landscape photography out there. Go check that out, twit.tv/hop. Please and thank you.
Thank you, Ant. And until next time, I'm Louis from Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiT.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are interested in checking out all things smart home and Internet of Things, then you should check out Smart Tech Today, the podcast I, Micah Sargent, do with my co-host Matthew Casanelli. It's all about the smart home and improving your automations.